What's been intriguing, of course, Holly, is that it's never really been a whodunit. It's always been a how have they got away with it for so long?
Well, they seemed untouchable.
Absolutely. So this is about a network in the South Carolina Low Country where power, prestige, you do me a favor, scratch my back, I'll scratch your back, bribing, fraud, corruption has become embedded within the relationships that exist within those particular 5 counties of South Carolina's Low Country. And so this has been about how the Murdaughs have been above the law.
It's Sully, Jones, and Johnson, and this is Kitchen Table Research, where we do the research so you don't have to. This case today, we're covering the Murdaugh murders and giving you guys some updates about the trial that just took place, but Jones and myself are fairly familiar with this case, but our co-host Johnson does not know the ins and outs of this case, and so she has not read the script today so that we can see her natural reactions, which should be fun.
Oh, sorry, I'm practicing.
Practice your gasps. Okay, so all of our pictures can be found on our website. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook. Go to our website. I think it's the best place because the pictures turn out really well and Johnson does a really good job of keeping up with it. If you go rate, review, and subscribe, I will send you a gift. So if you do this, just shoot me an email at kitchen.table.research@gmail.com and I will send you something cool from my personal collection. I'm gonna plug myself for a couple of things. I'm currently in second place for the national search for a model for the new Inked magazine cover. So if you go to our social media, I have a link provided for you to go vote. You can go vote for free, or if you make a contribution, which goes to a 501c charity that helps musicians, then I will match your donation to a charity or foundation of your choice.
Is there a match cap? Like how, up to what amount will you match?
I would match up to probably a couple $100.
Sully got that bling bling.
I'm definitely not going to match like $1,000, but I will donate to a charity of your choice if you go vote for me on Inked. Secondly, I am in a new studio. I have completely moved, so if we sound a little bit different, I'm still trying to get my studio together. I have moved into my late grandparents' house, and I am currently in the process of remodeling it into a gothic funeral-esque home. And so if you want to see my renovations, go to TikTok and you can find me at Design and True Crime and watch my renovations there. So, do you guys have anything new that you would like to talk about? I think, Jones, don't you have something you would like to announce?
So, we talked about putting together a monthly, semi-monthly, every other month kind of
digest.
Digest is a good word. And so I started on that, and the first thing I did was give an update to to each of the podcasts that we've already done. So some of them have updates, some of them don't. But then I got interested in the new Matamoros case, and so I included some of that in, and now I'm trying to decide whether I want to include that or not. So it's nearly are we going to put that in our website?
Yes. And I do think we should include cases that we may not cover on the podcast, because if we end up getting enough information together about them and it develops into, a breaking story, or if somebody gets arrested in the case, then maybe that's a Chatters episode. So I think that keeping our fans updated on the podcast that we've already done, but then also including cases that maybe are out there in the, media arena that we don't specifically talk about, I do think you should include those. I mean,
okay, then I'm going to keep working towards my goal. I'm nearly done. We'll just see. We'll send the first episode out and we'll see what happens.
And we do have one person that has followed our digest, and Johnson, who is that fan of ours?
So if you guys want to sign up for this digest, there's a subscription box at the bottom of our website. It's a quick form, like 2 things you enter, that's it. And our first one, we're going to give a shout out to all of our new ones until we blow up. So our first one is A.E. Williams.
Thank you.
Thank you for subscribing.
Yes, thank you.
We'll get that to you eventually.
And you know what, A.E. Williams, if you have any remarks or information that you'd like to give us that you would think make the digest better, go ahead. We'd love to hear your feedback. So, do you have anything you'd like to announce, Johnson? Or are you guys ready to jump into this story?
Oh, you put me on the spot. Oh, I'm practicing my reaction still. That's it.
Well, let's go ahead and get into it then. So today, like I said, we're covering the Murdaugh murders, and I have several things to say about this family, but let's take it from the top. Who are the players in this story? Who makes up the Murdaugh family? They are a family that has lived in Hampton, South Carolina for over 100 years. So the family started as solicitors or lawyers. But what is the difference between a solicitor and a lawyer?
It's the chief prosecuting attorney within a judicial circuit. So in South Carolina, where this case takes place, they have 16 judicial circuits that are comprised of at least 2 or more counties within the state. So the Murdaughs have been solicitors in their, judicial circuit court for over 100 years. So
Yes.
they are very prominent family.
Okay, so a solicitor is just a lawyer, but a circuit solicitor in South Carolina is basically the same as a DA. So a circuit solicitor specifically is different.
So he works in the circuit as a DA, but then he also prosecutes for
So he's a
private
circuit
firm.
solicitor and a solicitor.
Okay. And so a solicitor is just what they call lawyers in South Carolina?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, or like barrister or whatever. It's just the
Okay.
same thing.
Murdaugh family has been solicitors or lawyers, like Joan said, for over 100 years. One of them has the longest running, or was the longest running solicitor in U.S. history. So we start with Randolph the First, and he's like in the 1900s. He goes to law school and opens up a private firm. Randall Buster the Second, who does hold the title for longest solicitor in U.S. history, is the son of Randolph the First. Randolph Buster the Third, which we refer to him in this episode as Randolph because he is still alive. He had 2 sons, as far as I can tell, Alex and Randy, and both of them work in the judicial system, and Alex is a lawyer himself. So Alex marries Maggie, and of course she came from a very well-off family, and they met at college, and they end up having 2 boys named Paul and Buster. I don't know where this family gets this name Buster. I also don't understand. It's like spelled Murdaugh, yet they say it Murdaugh. And then Alex with an X, he calls himself Alec. So the name doesn't make sense to me, but I'm going to go ahead and stick with what the news outlets are calling him, which is Alec Murdaugh. Okay, so the family made their money being the DA or working for the prosecution in civil matters for South Carolina. And solicitors, meaning that they can also keep a private practice and represent individuals that hire the Murdaughs in a civil case. They were the running DA for their district for 86 years, and Randolph I sued a train company, which is where most of the money came from. Ironically, though, so this is Randolph I, the one that was in the early 1900s. So he made a bunch of money suing this train company, and then he died in a train accident.
Oh my gosh.
That's just so weird to me. But at any rate,
How did he die? What did he do? He stopped his car on the train tracks, or
I'm not quite sure. With these chatters, I don't do quite as bit of a deep dive, but maybe we can throw that in the digest for you guys. We'll maybe look into the Murdaugh's backgrounds, because there are a lot of weird things that are happening around this family, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was literally to get insurance money or something. But let's go on with the case. So,
okay.
in 2015, there's a boy in the road. Stephen Smith was a 19-year-old openly homosexual teen in Hampton, South Carolina. He was in nursing school and wanted to be a doctor. He's described as silly, smart, fun, a young man that was beloved by his classmates and friends. Although admittedly his homosexuality was not well liked by some citizens in South Carolina, he still seemed like an overall good kid that was loved by his age group and his high school peers. It must be very hard to come out in the South. We think today, with all the LGBTQ movements, that this is easy, but this is still back in 2015, and so he would have been in high school in the 2010s, and so I can understand that it might be a little difficult for him. But at any rate, like I said, he was a beloved member of the community. A citizen calls 911 and they report that there is a boy in the road. And the 911 caller says that they do not know what has happened to him, but he is dead. So the police get out there, and the autopsy reports there is severe blunt force trauma to his head, and he has a 7.5-inch laceration to the head where he was hit. And it was so bad, they originally thought that it was a gunshot wound. He also suffered from a dislocated shoulder. So his death is ruled an accident, a hit and run.
I'm sorry. What? That is not a fucking hit and run.
Thank you. So it's ruled a hit and run, even though there's no broken glass, there's no rubber marks, brake marks, paint chips, or any other evidence that Stephen was hit by a car. So it is believed that he ran out of gas, because he calls his current partner and says, "I ran out of gas. I'm going to walk down the road to the nearest gas station." And as he's walking down the road, he tells his partner that there's a truck behind him that's harassing him. That was the last
I like
time.
how the truck has a personality, and the truck's like, "Hey boy, how you doing?"
Well,
honk,
it's
honk.
it's not the truck, but rather the people inside, I believe.
That makes more sense.
Yeah. And because of his severe injuries and his mother's belief that this was and obviously not a hit and run, she demands an open casket. So they have to putty his wounds back together and make some kind of suitable funeral arrangement so that they can have an open casket. But his mother stated that she wanted people to see what had been done to her son.
Damn.
She originally...
That is...
It's not her son.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
Oh,
the mom.
Smith's mother.
Yes.
Not Murdaugh's.
No. The Murdaughs don't come into this until later in the story, so keep this in mind. So she originally received a call from the coroner, but then the second call she receives is by Randy Murdaugh, Alec's brother. So again,
who's Alec?
He's the main character of this story. Alec Murdaugh is the patriarch of this family at the time. Okay?
Okay.
So we're going to come back to the murder of Stephen Smith. So just remember his story for now. All right. Do you guys have any comments or questions about that case?
I
So
mean,
the only tie to the Murdaugh family at this point is that Randy calls the mom, and we don't know why.
He says that he is going to represent her in this civil case.
Okay.
Over, I'm not sure what the civil case was over, maybe a wrongful death suit. Okay. At the time, that's the only tie we know of. Okay.
Okay.
So it's ruled an accident, and years go by, and nothing comes of this. So 2018, a woman falls. Gloria Sutterfield, who had worked for the Murdaugh family for over 20 years and had practically raised Paul.
wait, who's Paul now?
Okay, so it's Alec is married to Maggie, and they have two sons,
Okay.
Paul and Buster.
Okay, got it.
Okay, I know. It's actually really confusing. I had to do maybe I'll post a picture on our Instagram of my family map. So Gloria Sutterfield, she had worked for the Murdaugh family for over 20 years and had practically raised Paul. She ends up tripping over dogs at their Moselle property, which is the property that Maggie and the family spent most of their time at, although they had several properties. So Gloria falls and she suffers a severe head trauma, and within days has a stroke and dies in the hospital. So
that is not from falling over a dog. What? I mean, did she fall down like 5 flights of stairs?
It seemed like it was a short flight of stairs and that she fell backwards and hit her head on one of the steps, is kind of the story. So there's
still sus because we've all tripped over our dog 80 times a day.
And even falling down a small flight of stairs, it's really hard to imagine that you would hit your head. At any rate,
this is like, what is there, an owl theory in her case too now?
Yeah. No owls in this case, but Maggie does place a call to 911, and actually all of these 911 calls, you can either YouTube them or True Crime Garage, which is one of my sources, they did a 4-part episode, and they have all the 911 calls included in their episodes. So, like I said, Gloria suffers a severe head trauma and within days has a stroke and dies in the hospital. The 911 call that is placed by Maggie Murdaugh, like I said, you can go listen to it. While waiting for medical personnel, the 911 operator is asking questions, and Maggie says she does not want to answer them. And the questions are like, do you know how she fell? Is she conscious? Is she bleeding? And Maggie's like, why are you asking me these questions? And 911 is like, it doesn't matter whether I ask you these questions or not. Emergency personnel are going to get there at the same rate. So it seems that Maggie hands the phone over to Paul, her son, who does speak with 911 and says that Gloria tripped over the dogs and fell and hit her head on the steps, as far as he knows. Gloria and Paul did have a special relationship, and this event seems to really set Paul into a downward spiral. So, meanwhile, Alec has told the family, the Sutterfield family, the sons of Gloria, that he will have a lawyer sue him for a wrongful death and pay the boys out. Alec gets in contact with a lawyer by the name of Corey Fleming, and he sues Alec Murdaugh for the death of Gloria Sutterfield so that he can give money, like I said, to the Sutterfield boys, Gloria's 2 sons. So between the lawsuit and Gloria's insurance policy, and after the attorney fees, the boys were to get about $3 million. However, the Sutterfield boys had no idea what happened with the lawsuit and what money was owed to them, and so they never saw a dime of that money. Alec pocketed the money and had previously put Gloria Sutterfield's insurance policy into his name, and for funds from the lawsuit were never transferred to the Sutterfield family. Instead, it stayed within the law firm, and Alec funneled that money back to himself. So the lawsuit was unknown to the boys until the main Murdaugh story broke wide open, and they figured out that they were owed quite a bit of money that Alec had kept from them. So the Sutterfield boys now have a civil suit pending against Alec. So what do you think about that?
Well,
Oh my gosh.
oh my gosh, is right. How does somebody change the beneficiaries on a life insurance policy to exclude her children?
I believe that Gloria did not know that her insurance policy had been changed.
Does she
How
even
is
know
that
she?
legal?
Yeah.
It's
Does
not
she even know
legal.
she has an insurance policy?
I'm not sure if she knew. I definitely don't think that she knew that she had a large life insurance policy that Alec had taken out on her. I'm sure he forged her signature. We're gonna figure out that the Murdaughs have their little tentacles in every little family and every little thing that happens in Hampton.
So what you're saying is that Alec Murdaugh takes out a life insurance policy on Gloria, who's a helper in the family, right? She's just an employee of the
Yeah,
family.
she like
He
cooks
names
and
him,
cleans and maintains their
so he names
Moselle
himself,
property.
he names himself as the beneficiary. And so when she dies, he gets all the money.
Yeah, even though
And the kids never knew the life insurance policy existed.
nor did they know that Alec had another attorney sue him for a wrongful death act, and that money should have gone to the Sutterfield boys.
Whoa, that is
So
quite a story.
the Murdaughs from this case will net about $3 million.
How long before her death was the life insurance policy taken out?
I don't know. That's something I don't know.
And I'm so confused. Why would he have someone else sue him? And then I don't understand. Wouldn't he have to pay that $3 million? How does that gain him $3 million?
Well, because he basically pleads guilty to it, and so in some fashion he ends up having another lawyer sue him, and then that other lawyer, who's named Corey Fleming, he takes his attorney fees and everything off the top, and then what's left is, I think the life insurance policy payout was like 500,000, and the lawsuit by Corey Fleming was about 2.4 after attorney fees, making it almost $3 million.
Well, I don't understand. If he was pled guilty, then he's paying that money. So where's this money coming from?
Well,
That
I
he's
think
gaining.
I think it came out of the law firm.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
It goes
Okay.
it goes over to Corey for distribution.
Mhm.
Corey gives it right back to the Murdaugh law firm.
So it's like
Or-
company funds.
It does. It does. Or he puts it right back into Alex's name, Alex Pocket. Instead of it going back into the firm, Alec pockets it.
Yes.
Do I have that? I mean, that's the only thing I can remember.
think
So that makes Corey just as guilty.
Yes, it does. It does. But again, nobody really knows what's going on in the background. And so, again, this is kind of swept under the rug, just like the Stephen Smith case. You know, there's fishy things about it, but the town, I think, feared the Murdaugh family and what they were capable of. And I think the Murdaughs had a big sway on the medical examiner's office, the law firms in town, because the Murdaughs they are partners to a law firm. So it's like PMD, MD, or something like that. I think it's 5 partners that Alec is in a law firm with. Okay.
Wow.
All right.
I have one more question.
Give it to me.
So when Maggie is like, I don't want to answer your questions, 911. I don't know you like that. Do you think that's because she's like, I don't want to implicate myself? Or do you think she's just married to a bunch of lawyers?
I think both. I think she knows not to say anything, and I think she yeah, doesn't want to implicate herself, or, you know, I'm I'm in my mind, I can't grasp how she would have thrown Gloria down. And because everything has been so covered up and swept under the rug, like I can't find Gloria's autopsy report. I don't know exactly what happened, but I do know that she suffered, like I said, a severe brain trauma, TBI, and then was once she went unconscious after falling down the stairs, she never woke up.
All right, so I'm going to keep my eye on Maggie.
Yes.
Well, and do you think Gloria, I mean, so is the implication that Gloria was attacked and, you know, with a instrument that caused the severe head trauma, or do we really believe that she trips over the dogs?
Well, I think
obviously.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm sorry, I know the answer, Sully. Obviously, they have been training these dogs for years to purposely trip people in the hopes that they'll get life insurance eventually.
Yeah.
Yes. And they'll be like, I don't know. The dog just loves doing that. I mean, that seems the most likely scenario to me.
And
right.
Some people have speculated that maybe she really did fall and trip over the stairs and that it was just an accident, but I can't grasp my mind around that whenever Alec already knows what to do in the event of her death, right?
If he had life insurance policies on all of his employees, that would be one thing, and I'm sure we can't find that out, but if it's just her, then it's sus as hell.
Oh yeah, super sus. All right, so I'm about to break this shit wide open. Are you guys ready?
Okay.
I'm taping my butt cheeks together.
2019, there is a boating accident. Again, this circles around the Murdaugh family, particularly Paul, the youngest son of Alec and Maggie. We have talked briefly about him earlier. As I said, after Gloria died, he kind of went into a spiral, as it seems that Gloria was a better mom to him than Maggie. He's about 19 when the boat accident occurs and is in school for criminal justice, ironically. So,
hey.
I don't think he made it as far as you have, but at any rate, we have 6 people in this story. So we have Paul and Morgan. So Paul Murdaugh and his girlfriend Morgan are dating. We have Paul's first cousin, who's named Connor Cook, and he is dating Miley. Miley is best friends with Mallory, and Mallory is dating Anthony. So we have 3 couples that
Who is Anthony?
He's also been a family friend of the Murdaughs for a long time and grew up with Paul. So all these people are really good friends and know each other.
Morgan, Miley, Mallory.
And then the mom's name is Maggie, and I feel like we're back at the Darlie Routier case.
Like, yeah.
Prerequisite for family drama that every name is
starts with the same letter. Yeah, it has to be. Okay, so let's go over it again. So Paul and Morgan, Connor and Miley, and Mallory and Anthony.
Okay.
So they go to the island that Randolph, Granddaddy Murdaugh, owns, and they take out a boat that is owned by Alec, and Paul is driving. So he has 5 other people on board. It's February and it's cold, and the reason that they go by boat down the river is to bypass DUI checkpoints that are on the roads.
Oh, that seems noble.
Yeah. So they are Snapchatting them chugging White Claws and drinking on the boat. And then they pull up to this oyster bake, who is put on by the Woods family. And at this party with the oyster bake, we can see Snapchats of the teens drinking. The Woods will later state that they had no idea that there was teenage drinking going on, but by the Snapchats and some of the videos that you can actually see on the Netflix documentary, it's completely obvious. So Paul docks the boat. He gets off and immediately beer bongs 4 natty lights, which...
whatever that means.
It means that he pours 4 beers into a funnel and just chugs it straight down the hatch. Now,
okay.
I'm like, Natty Light is probably the shittiest beer. I've only drank it a few times in college because I'm bougie and I don't drink beer like that. But at any rate, I'm like, you're freaking rich. Why are you drinking Natty Light? So,
Well, you don't want a beer bong good beer. Beer bongs are for the bad beer.
that's true. That's true. That's true.
Is that
Chug
true?
it so you don't have to
because you
taste
have to
it.
throw up after 4 straight
Yeah, I
beers
mean, I
really
wouldn't be
fast?
able to do that on my best day. Not even in college. I can't chug beer. It just makes me ugh. Okay. So, at any rate, the teens leave the woods dock around midnight. So, they've been there for a couple of hours. It is foggy and the boat has no lights. So, Connor, Paul's cousin, is shining a flashlight so that Paul can drive.
Oh my God. This is going to end so well, I can tell.
Again, I'm pretty sure that it's illegal to drive down any body of water without lights. I grew up in a lake house, and you at least have to have your white light up and your green and red light because you pass green light, or red light, red light. So I'm not sure how were getting away by driving this boat like this, but as Johnson states, nothing good is going to come of this. So on the way home, Paul and Connor are seemingly drunk, and Paul decides to stop at a bar called Luther's, which is on the river. And you can see them dock the boat on CC cameras. And Connor and Paul, you can see on CCTV from inside the bar, are taking shots of Jaeger and drinking beer.
I already am nauseous. How are they drinking this much?
Okay, well,
I mean,
remember
are they
they're
like 500 pounds?
19.
Even when I was 19, I'd fall asleep after like half a glass of wine.
Also, Jägermeister is disgusting. You can fight me about that. Okay, so Paul and Connor are inside the bar, and Paul gets kicked out for almost getting into a fight. The two boys
Is drinking at 19 legal in South Carolina then?
No, they both have fake IDs. And actually, the one that Paul has is his older brother Buster's. And they're all like redheaded, not attractive. Nothing against redheads. I love redheads. But this family is not pretty, guys. Like, I'm sorry.
You know you're white and rich when your name is Buster.
Buster is the worst name I could think of. Like, it sounds like something you would name a dog or something.
Well, we had a dog named Busta.
Busta.
And he was the worst.
Well, Buster's not going to come out like a shining angel at the end of all of this. So, Connor has a fake ID. Paul is using Buster's ID. The other 4 kids that obviously cannot get into the bar are sitting in a park. And they're there for, 30 minutes to an hour. So you can see them again on CCTV loading into the boat. Paul's girlfriend Morgan asked him repeatedly to stop drinking and to not stop at the bar, but obviously Paul refuses and decides to go to the bar. Miley also has to work early, and her boyfriend is Connor, and so both of these girls are like, we don't want to stop, it's cold, we don't have IDs, we can't get in. The boys override them. They get back on the boat, and it's very foggy at this point. Before the teens get on the boat both times, they consider taking an Uber. But Paul is almost defensive that he can drive and they don't need an Uber. And it's
No, guys. I swear I drive better when I'm drunk. I swear.
So the teens really don't know where they are on the river and how far it is to get back home, or if they can even catch an Uber. And so unfortunately, all 6 teens get back on the boat. So Connor's holding his flashlight and Paul's driving. When Paul gets aggressively drunk, he actually has an alter ego that comes out that's named Timmy. And all 5 teens agree that Timmy was out and driving this night, not Paul.
Oh my gosh. Your alter ego's name is worse than your original name?
And so I'll tell you a little bit about Timmy. When Timmy comes out, he likes to get naked. And he likes to put his arms out like he's on the front of the Titanic. So he's driving this boat, arms, spread eagle, naked in this cold water boat.
How does he have a girlfriend? What is going on?
Well, Morgan tells him consistently that he is too drunk to drive, and all of them are telling Paul that Connor needs to drive. Paul gets aggressive against Morgan, and he...
So Paul is actually naked that night?
He's in his boxers. And so later it'll come out that there were 49 bottles of beer on board, 23 that are empty. So I don't know if it's 49 plus 23 that are empty or if there's 49 total and 20 are empty, but that's a lot of beer. So what are you guys thinking at this point?
Well, divided by 6, that's only, 9 apiece?
Only.
Yeah, only.
But I mean, were they all Natty Lights? Because that's like, 4 beers, really?
Exactly. It was actually mostly Natty Light and White Claw.
Oh, of course, White Claw.
Yeah, of course, White Claw. And so
obviously too drunk to drive.
Was White Claw even out at that time? This is 2019. Had
White Claw was pre-pandemic.
Yeah,
that's how we're gonna live our lives now, pre-pandemic, after pandemic.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So no, they were available and they were drinking them that night. So Morgan actually tells Paul that he needs to let Connor drive, and Paul shoves her, calls her a whore, and spits on his girlfriend Morgan.
Lovely.
She begins crying, and so Miley and Morgan sit at the front of the boat on top of the ice chest. Paul and Connor are kind of behind the captain's chair, co-driving, co-holding a flashlight, and Anthony and Mallory are in the back of the boat. Paul begins to make donuts in the lake, and he almost hits a sailboat. They are next to a dock, and Mallory and Anthony ask Paul and Connor that they want to get out and they will find a way home. And Paul refuses to pull the boat over and let them out. So around 2 a.m., the boat that Paul is driving crashes into a pylon at 29 miles per hour. So boat speed is very different than a car. Going 30 miles per hour on the river when you don't have lights is really fast. And
so
then
it's a pylon that like those
holds
like
the bridge
light
up.
pole thingies. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and a lot of them do have like safety cushions or what are those things called? Like dinghies around them, but they hit the pylon going so fast, and it's a cement barrier that's holding this bridge up. And by the way, this is the only bridge on the entire river, so Paul hits it. So the 4 that are sitting toward the front of the boat, Paul, Morgan, Connor, and Miley, are ejected into the front of the boat. Morgan gets her fingers caught between the pylon and the boat. And actually in video, I don't know who's taking video of some of this, but you can hear some of the audio. And Morgan is blood-curdling, saying, "What the fuck? My fingers, like I'm hurt, I'm in pain, oh my god, oh my god." And Miley at the same time, who's best friends with Mallory, who is sitting at the back of the boat, is screaming, "Where the fuck is Mallory? Where the fuck is Mallory?" So Anthony and Mallory had fallen backwards into the water, and Anthony, God bless him, tries his best to dive down, try and find Mallory, come up for air. It's cold. He's in the water. He cannot find her. Again, a 911 call is placed by Connor because Paul decides to ditch his phone after, I think, calling his own family, the Murdaugh family. And on this 911 call, it sounds like Connor is very calm and put together, but his jaw is broken in half, and half of it is hanging out.
Oh.
And you can see the scar on his face to this day. So when he calls 911, again in this tape, you can go and find it on True Crime Garage, YouTube, whatever. Like I said, he seems to be calm and silent. He is answering questions in short sentences. So what are your thoughts at this point? What do you think happened to Mallory?
She drowned.
Yeah. However, Mallory and Anthony were, like I said, thrown off the back of the boat into the water. Anthony searches and searches until he can't stand it anymore and he swims ashore. Mallory cannot be found. As police and emergency personnel respond to the scene, you can watch some of the dash cam footage of Anthony yelling at Paul. Well, he's yelling at Paul and the police, and he says, "Do you know who he is? He's a Murdaugh. That motherfucker needs to rot in hell, but he ain't gonna. He ain't gonna get in trouble, and my girlfriend is the girl that's missing." Paul looks at Anthony and smirks at him. You can hear the other girls screaming in the background, like, "Where the fuck is Mallory?"
Now is Paul Timmy at this point?
Yeah, Timmy's in full force. And Timmy is running around in his boxer shorts like a wild man. He is not tested for a BAC. He's never put in handcuffs. He's never put in the back of a police car. All 5 teens go to the hospital. Paul asks to use one of the police officers' phone, and the police officer says, "Bro, I saw you ditch your phone back there. You can go get it and make the call yourself." So the teens are taken to the hospital. Morgan and Connor. So Morgan has the hand injury and Connor has the jaw injury. They both go into surgery as soon as they get to the hospital. And as soon as they are out, Alec and Randolph, Granddaddy Murdaugh, are at the hospital. They are trying to control the narrative, and they are trying to talk to all the kids and all of their parents before law enforcement can get ahead of them. So the Murdaughs are trying to control the narrative here. They say that they're their legal representation. Well, Morgan tells her nurse, no matter what they say or do not let the Murdaughs into my room. One of the nurses reports, and again, you can see this on CCTV footage from the hospital, Paul is acting erratically at the hospital, and 2 hours after the crash, his BAC is 3 to 4 times the legal level. Paul will not speak to anyone unless it's through his grandfather, Randolph. So the Murdaughs, again, like I said, they're trying to control the narrative, but they're trying to pin the boat collision on Connor, Paul's first cousin. So Paul continuously says that he was not driving and that it was Connor that was driving. However, all of the other teenagers are like, no, Paul was driving. But where's Mallory?
Dead.
What do you think about the Murdaughs intervening from a law point of view, Johnson?
I mean, I don't care if you say they're your legal representation. I feel like you shouldn't be allowed to be represented by a family member because that's just a conflict of interest, you know?
Or that...
Also, I hate this family and they suck so hard.
They super suck. So, what do you think about the idea of the premeditation to knowingly drink and drive the boat without lights?
I think it's pretty obvious he did not care and he knows he's not going to get in any trouble.
Right. It kind of reminds me of the affluenza, is that what they call it? The case where the boy that was drunk, again, he was like 16 or 17 and lived in his family's estate, and his family lived in another house that they owned, and he was in his truck drunk driving and hit like 4 kids and killed them, and he was let off by the judge for being too affluent to recognize his wrongdoings. I forget the name. It's like Ethan's. maybe something. At any rate.
I mean, there's an argument to be made there, but I mean, this family for real is like creating little mini psychopaths.
Yes, they are little mini psychopaths.
And it's the family's fault. They're raising them that way.
Right.
And did Paul knowingly get in that boat drunk, thinking, I'm going to injure these 5 other kids?
No, I think he's like, I'm hot shit. I know how to drive a boat. I drink all the fucking time. You know, you guys are being pussies and get on the boat and let's go. You know?
Okay.
I mean, I think that's his frame of mind. And then once Timmy comes out, I think Paul is completely blacked out. I mean, I don't even know if he remembers. It's really never been stated. I've never heard. But we don't know if Paul even remembers the accident. Again, I question whether he was on other substances than just alcohol. Even prescription medications mixed with alcohol can, you know, make you black out.
Sure.
I even had a little stint in my life where I didn't know that my antidepressants were bad to drink on, and I shattered my arm drunk and don't remember it. And I no longer drink. So there you go.
Don't let your son listen to this episode.
You know what? I think honesty is the best policy. And if he can learn from my mistakes, then I don't know, dude. Raising a kid
you're not going to make a little psychopath like the Murdaugh.
No. My son is held accountable. He's taught very good manners. So again, no, what do you think about there being like no BAC taken, no handcuffs put on, no one's arrested for this BUI, boating under the influence? If this was a DUI, don't you think they would have thrown him in the back of a cop car and said, you're going to jail, bruh? Like, especially if one of the people is dead or missing.
I think that when the police got there, Mallory's bleeding.
Well, they don't even know where she is.
Not Mallory, then.
Morgan.
The one who got Morgan. Morgan's bleeding. Mallory's missing. So they're trying to tend to the injured.
Like triage it.
They're trying to triage it. Paul, if he's that drunk, is probably passed out in the boat, or he's obviously still in the boat.
I mean, he just walks off the boat. I think it's one of those cases where, like, when you get in a drinking and driving accident and the person that's drunk survives because they're so drunk that it, like, I don't know, it like relaxes you, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's really no excuse for them to not have arrested the uninjured people. It's insane. And I mean, I don't care. I know boats aren't treated as seriously as cars, but I think they should be, because, I mean, they're even bigger. There's more potential for damage there.
Do you think that it's more dangerous to drive a boat or a car under the influence of alcohol?
I mean, if we're talking about potential number of casualties, probably a car, just because there are more people in cars.
Yeah.
But, I mean, in terms of, like, potential damage, probably a boat.
Well, like I said, my family has owned a lake house outside of Austin for quite some time, and I have seen a couple of boat accidents. I've never seen anyone, I mean, basically, they have too many people in the boat, somebody falls over, whatever, especially on jet skis. I've never seen anyone die. I've seen a lot of drunk people on boats, but it seems like most of the time, just like driving, the person that is driving the boat is more sober. And I've never seen somebody crash into a pylon because they're so big, and our lake, at any rate, they're lit up at night, and the police, you know, they watch the river, and if you're out at night and don't have lights on, you immediately get pulled over. So I'm just like, are there no police? You know, are there no, I forget what, the game warden's not out patrolling on a Saturday night. I mean, it is February, so maybe not. But at any rate, one of the police officers that is at the original boating accident scene states to another officer, do you know who the Murdaugh family is? Good luck. So I'm going to talk about the aftermath of the boating accident. So after the boating accident, several civil lawsuits are filed against the Murdaugh. And Paul will also face 3 felony criminal charges. So the civil suit includes Randolph, granddaddy Murdaugh, Randolph. It was his island that the teens left from, and he was aware as the property owner that they were drinking. Alec, for the same reason, it was his boat, technically. The Woods family, who hosted the oyster bake and had teens drinking openly. The bar that they attended, Luther's, for allowing minors to drink. Paul is, like I said, also charged with 3 criminal felonies, 2 counts of bodily damage, and 1 case of bodily harm. 3, I believe that's what it is. However, Paul is never handcuffed. His mugshot is taken in his dress clothes. He never goes into oranges or is never jailed. Paul is out on bond until the trial. But where is Mallory? Mallory Beach is found a week later. Her body had washed down the river into a marsh area about 5 miles down. The search and rescue team, I do believe, did a fairly good job. They had divers, helicopters, boat operations. But do you know who called the Beach family that night to let them know that their daughter was missing? It wasn't the police. It wasn't a nurse at the hospital or a coroner, but it was Alec Murdaugh. He's the one that informed the Beach family, Mallory's parents, that she was missing. It took hours for the Beach family to even be contacted and know that Mallory was missing. This happened about 2 a.m., and the Beach family did not know that Mallory was missing until about 6 a.m. that morning. You do see Mallory Beach's father talking in the Netflix documentary. You can see the agony in his eyes, and he asks, what if I would have been there in those early hours? Would it have made a difference? Probably not, but maybe. However, in the hospital, a worker overhears Alex say, talking about Mallory, don't worry, she's gone, end quote. The autopsy shows that Mallory suffered blunt force trauma to the head. I believe that she fell off the back of the boat and hit her head on the prop or some piece of the boat, never giving Anthony a chance to find her conscious. I think that she hit her head, went unconscious, and drowned, and unfortunately sank to the bottom of the lake. And I believe this lake was fairly deep. And again, it's February. Anthony's in his clothing. He's in a jacket. It's weighing him down. And I just have so much sympathy for him because when you hear him talk, I think he feels responsible. I do believe that Mallory died quickly, and she probably never even knew what happened. Mallory was described as smart, fun-loving. Fun-lifting. She was very uplifting. She's goofy, and in a lot of the videos and Snapchats and videos of the teens that hang together, she just does like the quirkiest dances, and she really seems like such a sweet, true to herself kind of girl. As the Beach family mourns the death of Mallory, Paul is out on bond. But at any rate, his friends just see him really spiraling down. I do think the death of Gloria, I don't think that I really don't think that Paul meant to cause this type of damage. I mean, the entire friend group split up, and people say that while Paul was out on bond, that he was suffering quite heavily. Although, we really don't know what was going through his mind. And I just want to mention that Paul is facing all of this stuff, but there's a bigger storm brewing. So in 2021, we're going to jump ahead 2 years. There is a double homicide. The Murdaugh family had planned a dinner at the Moselle property, one of the properties that they owned. And this is the property that Maggie spent most of their time at. It was their hunting lodge, and so it was on a big acreage. They had kennels for their hunting dogs, and they allowed, people in the area to board their dogs. And Maggie spent most of her time at this property, and this is the property that Gloria Sutter fell down the stairs at. One evening, Alec arrives around 6:45, and he and Paul, who arrives shortly after around 7, go out to the dog kennels, and they just go to check on the dogs. Of course, they have hired help to feed and clean the kennels, but they did like to go check in on the dogs from time to time because I believe the Murdaugh's hunting dogs resided there as well. Paul takes Snapchats of Alec at the kennels, and the two men go back to the house where this is a little gray. I'm not quite sure. I don't know if Maggie. So, according to their phones, it's known that they go to the kennels, they go back up to the house, and then at some point they go back down to the kennels. So I don't know if Maggie met them at the house and they had dinner and they all went back down to the kennels, or if Alec and Paul had just come back down to the kennels and Maggie met them there. Maggie had been in Charleston at a doctor's appointment and a massage, so she drove home around 7 and was back at the property around 8. If you want a crazy accurate timeline, I found one at the WJCL news site. They have posted the timeline that the court used because, I mean, at this point, as we know from the Moscow murders and other cases, every single thing you do is tracked on your cell phone. They could tell when he opened it, when he Snapchatted. They could tell when he put it in landscape. They could, mode. They could tell when he entered his password or did his face deal. So again, Paul's taking Snapchats. Alec is in them. Paul actually Snapchats a friend a picture of his dog that's staying there, saying that something was wrong with her tail. And the friend responds, "Hey, can you get her to sit and send me a couple more pictures of the tail?" And the message goes unread. And this friend, shoots him a couple more messages, gives him a call, and then at the end of the night is kind of like, WTF, bro, what the heck? So at this point, like I said, Paul's Snapchatting back and forth. Maggie and Paul are down at the kennels, we know. So this was around 8 o'clock. Alec calls 911, another 911 call at 10:06 to be exact. Again, you can go listen to this call. I literally hate his voice so much. I just do not like these people. But he says his family has been shot and it's bad. 911 obviously asks him if anyone is conscious or breathing. He says there's no way, that he had just gotten home from visiting his sick parents and that his wife and son are almost unrecognizable from gunshot wounds. The 911 call...
Alex, you're in a Snapchat, you idiot.
Thank you.
We know you were there.
Okay, so...
I thought lawyers are supposed to be smart. I'm sorry.
Well, Alec does try to cover his steps. Alec tells 911 that his son has received death threats, and as emergency personnel comes onto the scene, Maggie and Paul had been horrifically shot. Paul was shot with a shotgun to the back and head, basically decapitating and spraying brain and skull matter all over the scene. Maggie seemed to have been fleeing because she was shot in the back several times with a hunting rifle that fired specific rounds. And this does come into play in the court case. So
yeah, that's weird. Why would Alec use two different guns as two people are fleeing? So there's a second person.
Exactly.
Or he was trying to cover his tracks and use two different weapons.
Well, so yeah, but I feel like he wouldn't have time as they're actively fleeing him.
Yeah, the whole thing's weird.
Very weird.
And it's very difficult for me to understand why.
Why would Alec want to kill Paul and Maggie, though?
Exactly.
Well, Paul sucks. We all agree.
Well,
and Maggie,
but Alec,
I think Alec basically went cray-cray. His son's been accused of what? At least one murder. The other kids in the boat are, carrying out death threats against him and have filed suits. And as his dad, he's like, I don't know. He's obviously disappointed, but I think Alec had his own.
And that is where the dark storm is brewing.
Okay, because it sounds like he had his own problem.
So do you have any thoughts as to what that could be?
Maybe Paul shot his mom and Alex shot Paul.
Could be, because it's two different guns. 911, emergency personnel arrives. Both phones are collected. Maggie's had been tossed somewhere off the property. But again, if you go online, you can literally break down every single movement. You can follow Maggie in her GPS from her trip from Charleston back to the Moselle property. You can track all of their text messages, all of the information, all of Paul's Snapchats, including his friend trying to get a hold of him right after Paul Snapchatted about the dog. The autopsy comes back for Paul as they call it a massive gunshot wound to the chest and head, and Maggie was hit several times with a semi-automatic rifle, and the time of death is placed between 9 and 9:30. Now, Alec had left after dinner to visit his parents in Alameda, I think is the name of the town, which took some time to drive there and back, around maybe an hour there, an hour back, and then if he's visiting his family, it's a 2 to 3 hour round trip. Randolph, who's Alec's dad and Alex's mother, confirms his alibi that he did drive up to Alameda to check on them because Grandpa Murdaugh, Mr. Randolph, had began suffering, I believe, from Alzheimer's or dementia, and his mother had become quite sick.
So a reliable alibi. Your parents with dementia.
Yeah. That's not funny. Okay.
I mean, it is though. Like, they can't remember.
The verge of it.
They'd be like, well, if Alex said he was here, I'm sure he was.
Yeah. And I don't know if he visits them like in a hospital setting or just at their home. I'm not quite sure about that. So what do you guys think about all this? Do you think that somebody is hunting down the Murdaughs because of the boating accident with Paul and Maggie was just in the way? Do you think Alec really did drive out to his parents and that he comes home to find his family dead? Do you think there's two killers? There's two guns used?
Well, I guess my question would be, one of my questions would be, how is Maggie and Alex's marriage? Did he have any reason to want her dead? Or you're right, Anna, I'm sorry, you're right. What's your name?
It's okay. You can call me Anna. I'm your daughter. I think everybody knows my name out there by now. Especially if you go vote for me on Inked. My name is Anna Sullivan. So let me tell you about Maggie and Alec's marriage. It seemed like they were a perfect fit. They loved and obviously adorned their two children to the point of absolute brattery. But Maggie had started... I'll have to edit that out.
Leave it in. It's an ode to MFM.
Maggie had actually hired a forensic accountant to figure out where all the money is going. So we have the money. We have the $3 million from Gloria Setterfield's lawsuit.
Right.
So Alec actually puts out $100,000 reward for any information that would lead to the arrest of the murder of Paul and Maggie.
Let me guess. He calls and turns himself in for the money.
Holy shit, you're not really that far off.
Oh my gosh, shut up.
So let me go on. Okay, 2021. So this is the same year as the double homicide. A man is shot in the face. In September, after Maggie and Paul have been shot, a 911 call. God, these freaking 911 calls, man, Alec is like the worst. I don't know how he ever did public speaking or was a lawyer because he sounds like a freaking pansy on the phone. The 911 caller tells the dispatcher that he's been shot in the face on the side of the road while changing his tire.
How are you making a phone call if you've been shot in the face?
And does this sound a little
Well, that's what I thought
familiar?
You just said.
Well, yeah, but does this, like, a person that's been shot on the side of the road sound familiar to another case that we talked about at the beginning?
Sure.
The Stephen Smith.
Stephen.
Yeah. Alec I hate calling him, like, if you're gonna put your name as Alec, spell it Alec. I know an Alec, and it just drives me crazy that he spells it Alex.
But his mom and daddy did that.
No, he named himself that because his name is like Randolph Buster the Third, and he just decided to change it, or like he went by Alex. It drives me nuts that even I named the document that we're reading off of Alex Murdaugh. Because that's not how it's spelled. I just feel like
Spell it like you say it.
I know, I just feel like they like made up how they were gonna say their name. But anyways.
Well, they are rich white people. That's what they all do.
Right. Okay, so the bullet does enter the side of Alex's face and fractures part of his skull, leaving an entrance and exit wound through the side of his face, but he clearly survives. So again,
well, you don't really see those wounds when he's sitting in court.
No, I really think it just grazed the side of his face. Now, it was a .38 caliber, which, packs a little punch, and at close range, even if it just went through the skin, could definitely fracture like your facial bones. But I don't see any, like I said, Connor, who broke his jaw, and Morgan, who had hand surgery, you can still see their scars and wounds.
Well, I'm sure he could afford a good plastic surgeon too.
Right? He probably did. So do you think somebody is hunting down the Murdaugh family for their injustices? Or do you guys think it's inside, or do you guys think it's outside?
Inside.
Joan?
Yeah, I think Alec went crazy.
Okay. So the day that he shot in the face, he quit his law firm, which I have it abbreviated as PMPMD. So one of those M stands for Murdaugh, but there's 5 partners in this law firm. So he quit the law firm that day, stating that he was going to rehab to fix the relationships and himself after the death of his family. He resigns before charges are brought against him for misappropriation of funds. Where do you guys think all this money is going?
Right into his pocket.
What do you think? Think outside the box. What do you think, Johnson? What do you think, Johnson?
What's that place where all the money goes? Not the Bahamas, Panama.
Oh, like the Caymans, or
the Caymans,
like
either a Cayman account,
or
he's like.
But what do you think he needs the money for? I mean,
to escape because he did something even worse than kill his family, or he's using it to like lobby legislatures and like do shifty law things.
That's definitely, I definitely think some funds went to persuading lawyers and paying people off. I do think that for sure.
So, but how about drugs? Is he using drugs? Is he distributing drugs?
Jones, you hit the nail on the head. So the money was going towards an incredibly expensive opioid addiction of Alec Murdaugh. I've heard that he spent anywhere from 10 to 20, even some months writing $40,000 checks towards his OxyContin addiction, which
in a month.
And
oh my gosh,
for any of our listeners, OxyContin is basically heroin in pill form. I mean, you can't even get OxyContin anymore. After the lawsuit went through where, pill mills were pushing OxyContin, a lot of that stuff has been shut down. I mean, I have like an illness. Johnson also has an autoimmune illness. I hope you don't mind if I say that, but I don't.
How dare you? I am healthy.
On my worst day or with the most lax doctor, they would never prescribe OxyContin. I mean, they just don't prescribe that anymore. So the dark storm that's brewing in Paul's mind, and I'm sure in Alex's mind, was managing Alex's pill addiction. Paul's ex-girlfriend, Morgan, in the Netflix documentary even talks about when she and Paul were dating, Alec would go through withdrawals and he'd be white as a sheet, sweating and yelling that he was in pain. So Alex is experiencing, like I said, a major opioid addiction, and it seems to be hell on earth for Paul and the rest of the family when Alec runs out of his pills. The SLED, or the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, which is kind of like the State Bureau of Investigations, quickly realized that Alec was probably the murderer of Maggie and Paul. I'm not sure why Alec killed his wife and son. I don't know if they had insurance payouts, which I'm sure they did. I mean, he might have had a $500,000 to $1 million out on Maggie and possibly, half on Paul, which again is going to rake him in $1.5 million. So I don't know if he's just seeing this as a way to get more drugs, a way to get Maggie out of his way, who's hired this forensic accountant to figure out where all the money is going. So at any rate, SLED begins to investigate this case, and as they do, and as I mentioned earlier, the Murdaughs had their tentacles in everything. They reopened cases surrounding the Murdaugh family. So let's go over what SLED finds out. In the Stephen Smith case, the boy in the road at the beginning of this episode, he, of course, we mentioned, was a known homosexual, and his partner at one time was Buster Murdaugh. He is now believed to have been murdered by Buster by a baseball bat or some long blunt force object that left the 7.5 laceration in his head.
Can you imagine getting murdered by someone named Buster? I mean, that's just insult to injury right there.
And I mean, if you go look at pictures of Stephen Smith, he looks like a sweetheart. And I just feel so much sympathy for his parents. And I mean, he was considered a very smart kid. He was on his way to becoming a doctor. And again, we talk about these ripple effects, and for Stephen Smith to have died is I feel like a major loss. So it's believed that Stephen Smith ran out of gas and was walking down the road, and Buster and his friends came along in a pickup and stuck a baseball bat out the side window and smashed Stephen's skull in, driving
Oh my God.
at a high rate of speed.
Like, they treated him like a mailbox.
I would have wanted to murder Stephen Smith. Had they broken up their relationship?
They had broken off their relationship, and Buster did not want to be known as a homosexual because he would have been outed by the Murdaugh family.
All right.
And I believe he was with his friends. They were probably drinking and or on drugs. Also, Buster was on his way to be a lawyer like his dad. He had followed in his dad's footsteps and even went to, I think, the University of South Carolina. He had passed the bar, and then he got kicked out of school for plagiarism. So Buster is definitely not a innocent person in this case by any means either. Gloria Setterfield, who fell down the steps, was believed to have been killed by, quote, accident on the Murdaugh property, and since Alex signed the paperwork for her insurance policy, leaving it in his own name, plus the civil case scandal, I believe fully that she was actually murdered for money. Connor, Paul's cousin, it was figured out by physics and the autopsies and the injuries that the teens received that night, that there was no way that Connor could have been driving the boat. After obtaining information off the Garmin in the boat and a forensic recreation of the crash and whose body would have landed where, it has absolutely been determined that Paul was driving. So, what are your thoughts now?
No shock at all.
Well, yeah, I mean, we knew Paul was driving, but I mean, what do you I just wonder, what do you think is going through Paul's head? Do you think he's just burying himself in drinking and the party scene? Do you think he feels, because his friends on the Netflix documentary state, even Anthony, who lost his girlfriend Mallory, states that Paul was definitely not happy during this time, that he was silently suffering and possibly covering up that trauma or void by drinking and possible drug use. But wow. A lot of his friends do say that they think Paul was blacked out that night and does not remember the accident and felt extremely remorseful, although he never admitted that. Paul and Maggie's double homicide. Alec, like Johnson said, Alec was caught speaking in the background of Paul's videos, placing him at the scene of the crime. I mean, I don't understand if Alec didn't understand Snapchat or whatever, but it's like, bro, your son is literally filming and you can hear him in the background, which places him at the scene and not on his way to Alameda. Also, again, they get a search warrant for his truck. And in some places that the speed limit was like 30 miles per hour, he was going 80 so that he could make it to his parents and back. So I don't know if Randolph knew that Alec had killed Maggie and Paul. I'm not quite sure what Randolph's overall thoughts are. I'm not even sure if he's still alive. And if he is, I've not heard anything out of him. While Alec is driving, he also deletes calls and texts that he had between Maggie and Paul. And he texts Maggie because she was supposed to be driving home from Charleston that night, like, hey, where are you? Then he deleted, like I said, he deleted phone calls between them, but all of this is saved in your phone. So, it's believed that Alec had 2 different guns in his truck at that time and shot Paul first, and Maggie did run, and he grabbed a semi-automatic rifle and fired shots off at her, like literally hunting down a person. It's horrific. It is believed he did this for money because Maggie had hired the forensic accountant to look into where their money was going. Although the family is kind of shitty, between Buster killing Steven, Paul accidentally or on purpose killing Mallory, and Alec's opioid addiction. I did read one text from Maggie's phone, who I feel like she's not all that innocent either. She's at the very least a racist. She said, I just left the house in Charleston. I hope the Mexicans remember to lock it. Yikes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that was pulled up from her phone. Alec had hired, okay, so in the case of Alec being shot in the face, this is, again, wild. So Alec had hired Eddie as a conspirator to commit murder because they know this because checks had been put into Eddie's bank account in the amounts of $40K, $20K, and it's not known what money went to the drugs or to the conspiracy to murder plot. But Alec was...
Who's Eddie?
Eddie is the person that supposedly shot Alec in the face. Okay, so I'm going to go over that right now. So, okay, well, let me tell you about Eddie. So Eddie is a distant cousin of Alec, and he had been supplying him with this Oxycontin. So Eddie's bank account shows that he had received $40K, $20K checks at different times of the month. Sometimes it would be $40K, sometimes it'd be $10K. So we don't know what went to the quote unquote murder plot against Alec. But Alec was smuggling major funds out of the law firm to pay for his opioid addiction, and Eddie, his distant cousin, was the one that was supplying him with the Oxycontin, which I'm like, how much Oxycontin does 40 grand pay?
Or Eddie was like, hey, Mr. Rich Guy, one pill is actually 20 grand.
I mean, I'm sure he did like upcost him, but I'm like, where is Eddie getting all of this Oxycontin? I mean, I can't even get a fucking prescription for my antidepressant over here. Like, where is all this coming from? And at the same time, I'm thinking, you know, was it a pill mill where they were making their own pills? And if that's the case, was Alec actually addicted to fentanyl? You know, that had been laced into the Oxycontin, which makes this, it makes his addiction, you know, even crazier. So Eddie says that he did conspire with Alec to shoot him in the face. And Alec told him that he would be in his black Mercedes and that it was going to have a flat tire. Which...
What is this conversation like? Oh, buddy, hey. No, listen, you gotta shoot me in the face. It'll be so funny.
And I don't know if Eddie was shooting to kill or if Alec, he later admits that he was trying to commit suicide because it would have left Buster with a $10 million policy.
How are you trying to commit suicide by asking someone else to shoot you?
Exactly.
So Eddie actually says yes to this murder plot, and Eddie goes to the scene where supposedly Alec has broke down with a tire, although everyone is like, the Murdaughs would have never changed a tire. Alec Murdaugh probably had no idea how to even change a tire. So the story is, silly from the beginning, but... And then Eddie said, we got into a tussle. Alec wanted me to shoot him in the head, and I refused, and Alec took the gun and shot himself. And it was with a .38 caliber, which again is quite that's gonna pack a punch. I'm not sure where Eddie stands in his, I don't know if a lawsuit's been brought against Eddie or if they've ruled him out of the conspiracy, because he says that him and Alec struggled with the gun. Alec shot himself in the face, but then Eddie took the .38 caliber weapon and disposed of it. And I don't think it's ever been found. I could be wrong, but I don't think the gun has ever been found that Alec was shot with. In conclusion, Alec was convicted on 2 counts of murder and was found guilty. With a life sentence and no possibility of parole. And he is still facing civil cases such as tax evasion and, like the normal rich person, like civil wire fraud and all of that kind of stuff. So, what do you think happened to this family? Do you think this family was just detached? Do you think they thought they were untouchable? Do you think they ran like the mob? What the fuck was Alec thinking? What was he doing? We later learn in his court transcripts that he ran in circles with other shady business people, one of which had a landing strip on his property. So, do you think that Alec was smuggling drugs? Do you think he was taking 40 grand worth of Oxycontin a month? Again, who has all this Oxycontin and where can I get some? I'm just kidding.
Just money.
Money. You think it all comes down to the money?
Yeah, because what other way could you be raised in a world that insulated where you do these kinds of things? You know what I mean?
I definitely agree. I think this family was super insulated and protected by the South Carolina. Like we said earlier during the boating accident, he's a Murdaugh. Good luck trying to prosecute.
Yeah.
So
it's like the Trump family, honestly.
Yeah. Any of these families, and Trump is just as ugly. Let's be real. So, this is the end of the episode. So if you guys want to talk about anything, if you guys have any questions, I might be able to answer them. Of course, this is a Chatters episode, so I didn't do a deep dive, but I do have several sources, which I will go over if you guys don't have any questions or thoughts. I do want to say my condolences go out to the Beach family and Mallory Beach. It seems like a major loss. Same with Stephen Smith. It seems like both kids had big dreams and at the mercy of the Murdaugh family. And so I want to extend my condolences to all the families involved, including Connor's, who you hear talk in the Netflix documentary. Like I said, Connor was Paul's first cousin, so they were related, and what the Murdaughs did to that family was pretty cruel. It seems like, obviously Morgan broke up with Paul after the boating accident. Mallory is deceased, and Connor and Miley seem to still be dating because they do shared interviews in the Netflix documentary, which I highly recommend that you guys go watch. It's really good. And they kind of, I did things in sequential order, but they kind of start with a boat accident and then trail off from there. So it's presented in a slightly different way. So my sources for today are obviously the Netflix documentary, which I talked a lot about. True Crime Garage, you guys know that, and Last Podcast on the Left are some of my favorite podcasts. Last Podcast did a side stories on this a couple of years ago. They came to the same conclusion. This was right after Alec had been shot. that it was the Murdaughs. I have a Google alert set, so Yahoo, ABC, NBC, anything, any main news circuits. People magazine did a quite a write-up on this case. Dateline has an episode. The Island Packet, the journalist for that area, she also speaks in the Netflix documentary, but I did take some information from her newspaper. And again, the WJCL, you can watch all of the cop cam footage. Like, you can watch the cop cams when they arrive on the scene, and Alec is like acting kind of erratically, and he's like, well, I brought a gun down because, you know, my family has received death threats and this and that. And so it's about a 40-minute video, and they do blur out the bodies of Paul and Maggie, but you can see kind of what happens as first responders respond to that 911 call. I did listen to all the 911 calls, which are easily, you can easily find them. And of course, I've been following Reddit. So that is the end of that. Do you have any more gasps or oohs or ahs or questions?
Oh, must does. How, no, I don't.
All right. Well, then we will
I was going to say clutching my pearls, but obviously it doesn't translate in audio.
Yeah, this case is like a real, you think one thing happens and then something bigger happens and then something bigger happens. It's like an onion. You have to peel back all of the layers to really figure this out. And honestly, I'm just really interested in the way that these families work. I mean, how did they get in this position? You know, how did Alec get addicted to Oxycontin? It just seems wild. But, you know, we always say that murder and drug addiction, it doesn't discriminate. And so this family seems to be at the crux of a major, you know, conspiracy to funnel money back into Alec's opioid addiction. And I can't imagine your addiction being more important than your son and your wife. It's a crazy story. But at any rate, we will sign off. Again, if you go rate, review, subscribe, I will send you something. Go look me up on Inked Magazine and go vote for me. Go look at my new remodeling TikTok called Design and True Crime. And I also just want to state that if this episode comes out before the Darley episode, it's because we're actually trying to do something really special for that episode. Again, I've moved. I had a surgery. My grandfather passed away about a month ago. It's been a lot for me, and I had to take a little bit of a break. So I do apologize for the lag between the Darley episodes, but we will have Delphi out soon and this episode to follow. So stay tuned. We love being in your earbuds. We love all of our fans. We hope you guys stay safe out there.